And stay streaming.
Yeah, stay streaming. So, funny story with that, I guess. Hello, everybody. Welcome. We are doing the pre-show, and you'll notice we have a third with us tonight. This is Brian. Brian, say hello to everybody.
Hello to everybody.
For everybody watching, listening, Brian, last time he was on the show was back in 2018, talking about UXPA Boston. And we've started putting out calls for panelists from some of our friends of the pod that have been on the show before, and Brian answered that call today. So thank you for hanging out with us and talking human factors. To finish the initial story I was going with. So last week on the show, on the pre-show, on the post-show, I guess it was just the post-show, and it actually happened towards the end of the episode. What happened was there a bug on the software that we're using's like back end, and what ended up happening was, every change that we were making live. So if we were to change the overlay or change the captions on it, these types of changes, that I'm making now, or like swapping faces or whatever, those changes would be made live. However, our video feeds were frozen and our audio was not showing up. And so it was like, Barry and I frozen on our faces for, 45 minutes. And it was like 25 minutes. So we lost the last, 10 minutes of the show and 15 minutes of post-show. So we're back. That was an error on the platform's side, and unfortunately we did lose that audio. So we're going to answer that question that we had last week, the last question that we talked about. So it'll be Barry and I repeating ourselves, but that's okay because we got Brian here this week, and he'll offer another perspective. Yeah. Anyway, if you're what was that, Barry?
It'd be interesting to see if we actually answer the same way.
Yeah. Well, the world will never know because it wasn't recorded.
That's true. Yes.
Hey, if you are watching live, please do comment wherever you're watching from. Let us know if you have any questions you'd like us to answer in this little pre-show here we'd like to put on. We're just kind of putting together the show notes, making sure it's a great show for you all tonight. And this is where we really just banter about anything. I do have a point of questioning, I guess. I'll ask you, Barry. You said in our Discord that you would follow up on, you said, we'll give everyone the lowdown in the pre-show later. I want to make sure this is the pre-show later. So
this is true. Oh, for my climate ergonomics thing.
Yes, there you go.
Yeah, that's it was. So last night I had the privilege of presenting my musings on this new discipline that I've created all by myself because my ego tells me I can, around climate ergonomics. The idea being that we as human factors practitioners, I think, have a massive role to play, and we're not necessarily playing it enough. I've given this talk to a couple of countries already. I'm like, a couple of countries, how cool is that? And HFES was kind enough to reach out and ask if I would engage with them. So I presented to HFES last night as one of their webinars. And it was brilliant. It was really good fun. We had some quite cool questions, and we did it slightly differently this time. We sort of split it up into 3 different sections, talking about why should human factors get involved in climate change. What have we done about it? So we've come up with a process around what businesses can do and climate and us as ergonomists can engage with as a process. And then the third bit was around a future project that I'm trying to kick off at the moment, which is, if you're familiar at all with the military or anything like that, we have this idea of command and control stations. Defense use them, but also emergency services use them to basically direct things. Well, I got this idea, why can't we make one of them for climate and climate control, and making decisions around climate disasters and things. And so we're kicking that off. So I got to talk around that as well. So about 40 minutes, 50 minutes, something like that. And it was good fun. Really enjoyed it. One of the most nervous I've been for doing a presentation in quite a while.
Wow, that says a lot.
But it was fab.
Good.
But
Brian,
thank you for being there and watching, because clearly you couldn't be bothered.
Yeah. I couldn't. I had other things that I had to, and I miffed because of the scheduling. But hey, I do want to get over to Brian. Brian, it's been a minute since you've been on the show, since we caught up. What has been going on since we last chatted?
Yeah, so I like to join every few years, keep things a little fresh. So last time I joined, I was about to go to grad school, and now I am done with grad school. And I've been out in the world for a while, and now I'm a UX designer at Charles River Labs, helping make medicine go faster, which seems to be nice these days.
It's crazy that the podcast outlives the duration of which some people spend in grad school. That kind of blows my mind that we've been around for that long.
Yep, before and after.
Yeah, no kidding. So really important question to you both. This one's probably more of a Barry question. I don't know, Brian, if you're into sports. Did you all watch that American football game that happened this weekend that was... oh, yeah, okay, there you go. And what happened? So your team won. Okay.
Rams won.
Oh, okay.
Rams won.
The team I was rooting for won too, because I'm a Ravens fan, and Eric Weddle became a Ram, and I gotta root for that guy because he's just such a nice person and defensive player.
Mm-hmm.
And the other team, the Bengals, was in my division. Can't root for the opposition, so it worked out well for me too.
It's interesting. I don't really watch that much sport, and I only got into American football. What about? But it was only a couple of months ago, wasn't it? Because I started talking about it when I was on here, and the main reason I chose the Rams is when we got married out in the States, and we got married in St. Louis, and at the time the Rams were in St. Louis, and so it's like, well, if you're going to go for a tenuous link to supporting a team, there we go. So we did, and it just happened to be that then, as soon as I started supporting them, they started getting better, and we go and win the Super Bowl. I mean, how cool is that? The main downside is that obviously you keep on playing American football out in the States, and means I have to watch it between sort of 9 o'clock at night and 3 o'clock in the morning. But Nick's had been training for that by doing this podcast, you see. So.
Yeah, because it's, once again, late for you. And I am eternally grateful for you staying up every Thursday night and going to bed after midnight. And hey, we are putting together show notes, and we want to make sure we have a good show for you all. Brian, there's a section towards the end here called One More Thing. Barry, you two, do you both have that covered there? Just want to make sure that we have something to talk about. It's literally just one more thing.
But yes, I will be all set.
Yeah, there's a bit of scrolling going there.
Packed show.
And I'm thinking, are we feeling good on the show notes? Do we feel like we need to add in anything else to this list here? I think we could. I think there's enough here for us to go off of. I see you guys added some notes there, so I'm happy with that. Yeah. I think this point can probably go, unless anyone has something specific they want to talk about, because I don't really.
No, I'm good.
Oh, okay. I'm gonna go ahead and can that for now. Yeah, I'm gonna add just a couple. Couple notes here towards the end.
Oh, I put some of my notes in the wrong bit.
That's okay.
I'm gonna see
yeah,
some
you can.
My bits just randomly appear.
That's fine. Yeah, we can actually even can that. I think there's actually. I think some of your. Oh yeah, we are kind of. Okay. Let me see here. I feel like there's got to be something that we can pull into this, but I am just struggling to find any reliable source. Like, I was looking up ergonomics of paraplegia.
It is interesting because, again, the and I think this is what it's going to make. It's quite an interesting piece that there's not that much guidance around this, because it must be so individual. Around, it's got to be so focused around the injury, because even though we just say, paraplegics, presumably at the level of where they're paralyzed must make such a difference. So,
Yeah.
So what they can
I think there's enough that we can speculate on it. Even if there's not hard science on it, you're right. There's not research currently. I mean, this is probably the cutting edge of it, and so the fact that there's no research that we're finding, at least in our little what do you want to call it? It's our podcast research.
It's our due diligence.
Due diligence. There you go. Yeah, that's exactly what I was looking for. Yeah.
There's the lawyer word.
Yeah, I don't use that very often.
Diligence.
I can't remember whether I talked about this at the pre-show last time or the pre-show. But I mentioned to you that there was a piece of work that we didn't win, and
yes,
and I was a bit annoyed about it. I've got a meeting with the people tomorrow to discuss why we didn't win.
Oh,
so no, I mean, we certainly have it over here where you can sort of get in touch with the suppliers of the work, and because it's government-based stuff, there is an obligation on them to, if we wanted to get feedback, so we can make ourselves better. And
right.
I've since found out there was only 2 people who applied, it was being one of them. So it's going to be a case of, yes, what was it so bad that we did so bad, and put them on the spot a bit. So it'll be interesting to get that feedback.
Yeah, I really hope they're not watching the show tonight.
Well, I think
because then they can prepare. And
well, I mean, I've already sent them the email saying like we'd be really keen to learn about what we do in the future, how we can improve ourselves in the future. So yes, I've got nothing to hide. I'm fine.
Very respectfully.
I guess there's one good thing about doing government things. They kind of have an obligation to be transparent, whereas a lot of private corporations would just go off into the night.
Yeah, it's some of them, and I think that's where you can tell the quality of the people you're working with to a certain extent, because certainly a lot of the work we're doing goes into, I'm either supporting other human factors companies or whatever, and I'd rather they turn around and said, look, yeah, I'm going to this time because of this reason, but maybe next time. Or if they're just going to be open and honest and say, no, don't want to work with you anymore because of this. At least then you learn, you crack on. It's the when you get something back and it just says, no thanks. Right, okay, that doesn't, why? Because then you just go into a hate mode and rage mode and things like that, and it's not healthy and not helpful. Though even with feedback, I still go into rage and hate mode. But
at least hopefully you can be productive about it as opposed to the nothingness.
I feel so lost. Like, what do we normally talk about in pre-shows? This panel view, this panel format is tripping me up just a little bit. Not in a bad way. It's a good way. I feel like there's normally like 3 or 4 topics that we talk about before a show. Oh, you know what it is? It's not the format. It's the fact that we already have our It Came Froms. Like, we're not looking through those right now. This is what we'd normally be doing. We're finding those.
You were too prepared.
Yeah. You know what? It is my one more thing. I'll talk about it tonight, but I think the meds are working.
Finally.
Right. Like Barry, a couple weeks ago, right before we were both feeling unwell for that show, I sent you the notes on like Wednesday night, and I was like, I think they're working. I got all the notes on Wednesday night because it was a blowout for the for the poll, and so a lot of it was set in stone, wasn't probably going to change overnight, and so I got everything done, sent it Barry's way. The next day he goes, "I'm terribly sorry. I'm not feeling well." I was like, "Oh yeah, me neither."
He just scared me. That's all. That's what it was. But no, it was. Because I've had that. Because last night I didn't sleep very well either. I had to, because I think I got through this HFES presentation. As I said, I for some reason, it's not often. Some presentations I just wind myself up about and stress myself out about. I don't know why. Just especially as I've just sat here. It's not like going on a big stage or anything like that. And so I stressed myself out about it. Done it, and it was such a. And I thoroughly enjoyed doing it because I thoroughly enjoyed talking around stuff I enjoyed talking about. But I think it was just almost a come down afterwards. That I was sat in the sofa watching TV, and then my wife's prodding me, going, "You've been asleep for about 2 hours now." I'm like, that means I'm not going to sleep. That's brilliant, joy. But I still felt so tired. I just felt achy tired, and so let's go to bed anyway, and hopefully I'll just fall asleep. No, that didn't happen. Yeah. And then I was still up early this morning. But,
let's talk about sleep for a minute, because my hi Melissa, if you're watching, my therapist. Basically, I've been working with my therapist. She's like, "Hey, so how's your sleep doing?" I'm like, "Oh, it's fine. I'm getting like 5 hours of sleep a night." She's like, "What?" I'm like, "Yeah, I usually function pretty okay on like 6.5." And so basically my goal this week is to take melatonin 2 hours before I want to go to sleep. So it end up being like at 9 every night this week. And it's been going okay, except for last night. Last night, I got kicked in the back by my son at around 4:30. And so I've been up since my 4:30, which was, 10 hours ago? And I have to deal with the whole post-show checklist after this. And man, it's gonna be a good one. I can tell you.
Man, I sure feel like a prima donna because I'm usually aiming for like 9. If I'm 8, I'm like, eh.
How do you get 9 hours sleep?
Usually in bed.
Oh, I can't do it. Normally, I'm a bit like Nick. But if I get 6 hours, 7 hours is a good night. But no, it's. I did a whole lot of trying to do the whole behavior change thing before Christmas, and what worked really well is you get into that routine. And this guy's telling me, about 10 o'clock at night, go and have as hot a shower as you can stand. Do that, right? Okay, fair enough. And then if you do that at 10 o'clock with an aim to be asleep by 11 o'clock, so you basically have an hour's wind down. But you have this hot shower, and then that automatically puts your body into some sort of mode of, it's getting cool and go to sleep type thing. And kind of works quite well, right to the point my shower broke. And then it's not so well now. But yeah, I think because we can't get melatonin in the UK.
Oh, really? Is that not something you sell? Wow. Okay, that's I feel privileged now.
Yeah, it's very common in America.
When we've done, because obviously it's very common for people to take on flights and stuff to get the body clock shifted and all that sort of jazz. But you can only get it on prescription over here, I believe. Anyway, or it certainly used to be the case. You could only get it on prescription. So yeah, it's there's no easy fixes that way, or easier fixes that way.
Yeah, for me, one fix that really helps is that routine, and also changing my lights. I'm very sensitive to lights, so when it comes to be like 7 p.m., I start like dimming all the lights, and it just keeps going until I go to bed. And it's like,
oh, that's cool. So you got all the smart light setup.
Yeah, I installed all the Hue lights in my apartment.
Yeah, cool. It's no, I got the whole Hue.
I can sleep well.
I've got the Hue setup because I'm basically sat at the bottom of my garden at the moment in a little cabin that I made a few months ago. And this has all got the Hue light setup, which was great until I started doing these podcasts, because about 10 minutes in, and basically all the lights would go off in here, and I couldn't work out how I'd set it up because it was movement controlled. And so
You know,
as soon as
I think that actually happened to you last week on the pre-show.
it did briefly. I don't know why. I think that was one of the kids messing about. Actually, that wasn't.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I almost commented on it. I was like, hey, what about the lights?
Yes, because it does that, and he was like, "Oh, that's so scary."
I don't remember if it was the pre-show or the actual show. Like we had just started or something.
Yes,
I don't remember. I'm gonna check. I'm gonna do an investigative report here on when that happened. I feel like it was towards the beginning of the show.
I think yes, it was either just towards the end of the pre-show or the start of the main show. That's why I've now got a button just stuck to the wall here, just in case. It's my hit button in case of no light.
Yeah, panic button, right?
Yes. But, well, considering I don't use a Halo so well,
found it. Hang on.
Oh, is it the main show?
Yeah. Hang on. I'll share with everybody here while we're in the pre-show. This is last week's main show. Let me just pull this up for you all and bring up the big screen here really quick. So you should be able to see that okay. And just put us down here. Actually, I'll overlay. Whoa. No, make that big. There we go. All right, so this is last week's show here, Barry and I. I was doing the intro here, and right around, here, on Barry's side, you can see his lights go off right after he. Yep, there you go. Yep. Oh, panic button.
Emergency light control works really well.
Yes.
Yeah, at least the low light works shockingly well on the webcam. We can still see you pretty well.
Yeah. I picked myself up the Elgato face cam, because I was doing more of this and I wanted something to be solid, and I just like buying gadgets, if I'm honest. So
what is that, like a ring light?
No, it's got no light at all. It's just the most expensive webcam I've ever seen. But it's about it's got decent optics in it, and but it's got no microphone or anything like that in it. So it's got no frills as such. It's just a solid quality webcam, which took me a lot of justification to try and get the excuse to buy it. But then my wife didn't look, and I quickly pressed OK, and so once I clicked OK, she couldn't take it back.
No refunds.
Yeah, exactly. Amazon doesn't take things back. Don't you know this? But,
famously like that.
Hey, while we're talking tech, I think last week, Barry, did I do my my upgrades to my Oculus on last week's show in the post show?
Yeah.
I don't remember. I'll do it this time because I have something different to talk about in the in the one more thing. But for anyone watching, listening in the pre-show here, I did talk about last week about all the upgrades I made to my Quest 2, and I made another one since last week. So we'll start at the front here. So at the very front, you see this like little vent fan here. This is with a custom faceplate here that rests against your head. The difference here is that it has a built-in like vents at the bottom, so it pulls air through with this fan at the top here. I realize that I'm now trying to speak for our patrons who are listening to an audio-only version of this. So anyway, it pulls air through the mask, and it defogs as you're playing. So if you're like doing fitness or whatever in VR, you are less likely to experience fogging. The second thing I'll point out is that this actually has a halo. Halo. What do they call it? It's like a halo headband or whatever, where it rests on the front of your head and kind of tightens up at the back of your head. Where before not custom, I should say stock, is literally just this strap that you take around your head and it straps to the device. A little bit wobbly. But this head strap, while I'm talking about it here, actually has a battery that clips on via magnets, and it just, boom, it's charging right there. And it has a nice little ding, auditory feedback for when you're in VR and you can't necessarily see it. There you go. And
I like that it's magnets too. It's that way you can like do it when you're still in VR and not have to like line up things.
It's very powerful magnets too. So like even like I can shake this thing and it's not coming off. I'm showing you right now.
It's like flinching, waiting for it to come through the camera.
Right. It's not coming off, and then
Can you wipe any floppy disks?
I'm doing this pretty vigorously here. I'm like shaking this thing quite significantly, and it's not coming off. The last upgrade that I talked about last week was the custom lenses. Those are still coming. It takes a while because they're custom lenses for my prescription. They're going to be magnetic, and they just go right in. The last upgrade I made this week. So this headset actually came with two. So this is actually what's like kind of sitting behind you is these little pads, and they're fine. But because of the material that they're made of, they slip a little bit on the back of your head. And so this company came out with a version 2, or I guess it's the version 1 of this headband, which doesn't have the halo, and I have the packaging here. They came out with a conversion kit. So you can go from the one that I have to the one that just came out, even though it's less advanced, it's just in development longer. But anyway, the point with this one is that it's just kind of like, straight back, tightens around the back. It's a conversion kit. And with that conversion kit, they came with a separate set of grips. So this is like that. It's like a hex material, like it's a honeycomb kind of padding that has some pretty tight grip on it. So like, and it doesn't really slide around as much as the pads. And so that's all the upgrades that I've made to my Quest, and it now feels quite substantial. All these upgrades are probably like another $100. So like all things considered,
what's more expensive, the Quest or all the upgrades together?
Well, everything pictured here is probably $100. What's not pictured is, of course, the lenses, but I'm willing to pay for those. Those are $80. And so together, all the mods at the end will likely be around the same price as the Quest. So total headset cost probably around $400-ish. All things considered, not bad.
Still worth it. Yeah.
Yeah, especially like I can't sing the praises of not having a cord, like a corded VR setup. It's just grab and go, and the fact that this tightens up so compactly, I could take this with me on business trips, personal trips, and be able to get some exercise while I'm in my hotel room, and everyone next door is wondering why there's a bunch of like, I don't know,
banging and bouncing going on in the room next door, I think.
Yeah,
is
exactly. Yeah, there you go.
See, I never thought I should really take my Quest with me on business and use it to watch sort of TV and stuff. That would have made my Super Bowl experience so much better.
I think somehow this turned on. Give me a minute. I need to. This makes for great podcasting.
I do really like the fact that it's wireless, though. Like, I have a Valve Index and a Quest, and I use the Quest more than the Index just because I have to like start up Steam VR with the Index, make sure things are calibrated, as opposed to I put on a headset and I'm set.
Yeah, it's I've had to go with. Well, in fact, I've still got a hold of the PlayStation VR, but I also used to work a lot with the original Oculus Rift. So that was corded and no headset, which was obviously the first thing you do is put a headset on it, because I don't see how they got away with that in the first place. But the just the whole simplicity of the Quest, just be able to put it on, seeing really good graphics, simple but effective games, absolute genius. So
yeah, I do hate the graphics, but I think it's like the price of where we are in technology right now.
Yeah. Somewhere around here, I have a DK2.
Nice. That's old school.
Yeah, it's still sitting somewhere around here. I don't know where it is.
Yeah.
Anyway, we are 1 minute out. If you are joining us live, thank you. Stick around. We're going to actually do the main show here in just a moment. We're going to be talking about how this app will control legs on paraplegic people. So that's kind of exciting. Stick around. If you're watching again live, let us know where you're watching from. If you have any questions, drop them in the chat. We might read them on the show. Stick around. We'll be right back with the main show right after this.
Welcome to Human Factors Cast, your weekly podcast for human factors, psychology, and design.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Human Factors Cast. We're recording this live on February 17th, 2022. I'm your host, Nick Roome. I'm joined today by a wonderful panel of folks. Up first, up in the top right corner, we have Barry Kirby.
Hey, great to be here. How are you doing?
Hey, Barry, I am good. And down in the bottom left corner, I don't know. It's like the boxing ring. I don't know. Brian McDonald.
Hello, everyone. It's good to be back. Like to join every few years.
Yeah, so Brian was last on our show for UXPA in Boston back in 2018. So welcome back to the show, Brian. We got a great show for you all tonight. We're going to be talking about how an app enabled a paralyzed man to walk. It's like a miracle. And later, we're going to be answering some questions from the community about the long-term unemployment zone, the differences in experience gained between lab work and internships, and when you might want to consider a coursework graduate degree versus a thesis graduate degree. But first, we got some programming notes, and I want to just say a huge thank you to our Discord community. This last week has been kind of crazy in our Discord. On a whim, I had asked kind of a, hey, who's here and what do you all do? Tagged everybody in our Discord. It's been traditionally a little quiet, but man, it is just lit up over the last week. There's been a lot of great discussions, job posts. If you're interested in that type of thing, there's a bunch of other Human Factors professionals from all over the world hanging out in our Human Factors Cast Discord. We've been posting resources for you all, cheeky comments from Barry, all the way around. Lots of different discussions going on there, and I thank you all for participating in that chat. We're going to try to be more proactive about putting out those prompts into the world, and so if you want to be part of that, there's links all over the place in this description on our website. You can find us, but it's time we get into the first part of the show we like to call I don't know what that was. Anyway, this is Human Factors News. This is why you're here. We got an exciting one today. I mentioned it at the top of the show. Barry, what is our news story this week?
So this week we're talking about a spine implant allowed a paralyzed man to control legs using an app. So for the first time ever, an app-based electrical implant has allowed a paralyzed person to walk again. Swiss researchers used electrical implants connected to a tablet app to help Micro Riccardi become the first person to walk again after a severe spinal injury that he suffered during a 2017 motorcycle accident. Though this is the first time the tech has been used on a paralyzed person, the type of implant researchers at the Lausanne University, sorry about getting that wrong, hospital used to help Riccardi walk again is not entirely new. Spinal cord stimulators like the one modified for this research have been used for decades to help people manage chronic pain. But this is where this application is new and innovative. Using an app that connects to the device and two backup buttons in case of a poorless wireless signal, users are able to select what type of motion they want. The initial results have been stunning on the three initial subjects. Within the first hours of therapy after implantation, all three were able to move their legs. They were soon able to swim, cycle, and stand with the help of a walker in the lab. Soon after, they were able to move around outside the lab as well. These results have been even more spectacular given how labor-intensive these previous spinal implant researches have been. Previous attempts at using spinal cord stimulation to restore mobility have been largely labor-intensive and required months of working with an intensive rehabilitation team. It can be done quickly. You don't need as many resources, and it could be applied at a much larger scale with this implementation. There's obviously much more work to be done, but making these kind of implants available to the average spinal cord injury patient, this, without a doubt, is a massive breakthrough. Brian, what do you think about having your limbs being controlled by an app?
That's super cool, but I am terrified of what happens if the company goes away. Because, yeah, being able to use your limbs when you couldn't do it before, amazing. But like the same week, IEEE came out with an article about people who are using a implant in their eye. So the article states that Barbara Campbell was walking through a New York City subway during rush hour when her world went abruptly dark. She'd been using a high-tech implant in her left eye that gave her a crude kind of biotic vision, partially compensating for the genetic disease that rendered her completely blind in the 30s. And she was about to go down the stairs when all of a sudden I heard a beep, beep, beep sound. And that was her Argus 2 retinal implant system powering down. The patches of light and dark she'd been able to see with the implant's help vanished. And that company also vanished. So you couldn't get any updates. People were trying to get MRIs and couldn't get those. So it's the sort of thing where I would love this to be an amazing, like, short term thing where someone can somehow use it for rehab and then potentially not need it anymore. But with the long term implications, I mean, people just have to take that into consideration when they're getting it. Probably worth the trade off of something rather than nothing for a short amount of time, but whew, that's terrifying. Nick, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's a cautionary tale, right? I really do love it when technology can sort of, I mean, that's what technology is for. Technology is for bridging some of those gaps in human performance. And in this case, it is because of a disability. And I love when technology can bridge those gaps in terms of accessibility. The Book of Boba Fett just aired, and they have a whole group of people called the mods that have enhancements in some way, shape, or form. And this is, I don't know, this is just awesome. You do bring up some great points, Brian, about what happens if the company goes under. I think this article does kind of touch on a little bit of that. They have some redundancy in physical buttons on some interface. I don't remember if it's like a control box or something, but you're right. Like, what happens if it does stop working, customer support doesn't exist? Well, then you got to find another company, but you're high and dry in that moment. And it might actually be a moment where, I don't know, maybe it's not life and death now, but like, what happens if this like breaks down in the middle of the street? And you need help from strangers to get you out of the street, or on the train tracks and there's no one around, or I don't know why you'd be walking over train tracks and there's no one around. My point is, it could be really inconvenient. So thank you for bringing up that point. Barry, I am curious as to what your thoughts on this article is.
So I think it's cool. I mean, like, really cool. The fact that we've got people who have such life-changing conditions that they're literally immobilized, or they have to rely on people in such a significant way just to live an everyday life, which we all know we all don't like doing that. And I know a lot of people, you know, get over it and learn to rely on other people, but none of us like having our independence taken away. So to have this sort of technology is clearly life-changing for people who have these injuries. But I do have questions. I've watched the videos which accompanied the article, and I'd encourage people to do so, to have a look at them. How must it feel to have movement happening on your body without any stimulation from you? You know, suddenly your legs start moving. Now, in the videos, you can see that it's being controlled by an app on a tablet. But at times, the person whose legs are moving, it's not him holding the tablet, it's somebody else. And they're sort of going left leg, right leg, left leg, right leg. And that's just got to feel weird, surely. There's a film over here in the UK, I don't know whether it's made it across the States. It's an animation called, around Wallace and Gromit, called The Wrong Trousers. And it's kind of the same where the lead character is just, he gets imprisoned in these trousers and they start getting controlled by this little penguin and stuff. I suggest you go and watch it, because actually it's not dissimilar sort of thing. But you know, the control interfaces, how you make that work is got to be quite a big deal, and I think we'll go into that in the main discussion. To the point that you both made around the companies going out of business who produce this sort of thing. This just screams for me open architecture development. It's the sort of stuff that it's got to be out there with a good focus on standards. But if you've got an open architecture, then actually, if companies do go out of business, then all is not lost. And we are, I think, overall in dev domains going down that route. But this is still, this is proper cutting edge stuff. Even when preparing the show notes for this, it's a struggle to find design standards, build standards, HFI standards, human factors, best practice around this type of stuff because it is so cutting edge. So it's going to be some time there yet. But no, I think it's massively exciting.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. There are a lot of different things that we have to consider about technology like this, and you actually have some points towards the end of our discussion that I want to make sure we touch on, like cybersecurity, because you mentioned open architecture. And so let's kind of use this. You're absolutely right. We did struggle quite a bit to find any relevant literature for this before the show tonight. This largely reminds me of the state that exoskeletons were in just a couple years ago, where there were kind of this lack of standards across the board for what it means to be an exoskeleton, how to design an exoskeleton for a human. I feel like we're kind of at that point now where, because of these types of implants, this technology, we kind of need that. So what we're going to do, instead of breaking down the human factors aspect of this, there's a lot of psychological issues that go on with dealing with paraplegia. I think one way we might think about this is kind of maybe what a paraplegic is going through psychologically, and then looking at it through the lens of potentially trying to accommodate some of these when designing either an interface or some sort of interaction mechanism for this type of technology. So, Barry, do you want to jump into any of the psychological stuff? Anything standing out to you?
Yeah, it is. I mean, firstly, I think the real big hitter here is we talk about paraplegia like, it's just the same for everybody, when it clearly can't be, because everybody's injury itself is going to be unique. One way or another, because where you've got the injury is going to differ up and down the spine, and the higher up the spine you have your injury means you have a different level of paraplegia, a different level of disability. So from that perspective alone, everybody's injury is going to be different. But also then the psychological effects of having that injury is going to be different for every person, because you're going to deal with it differently depending on a whole range of factors, like what support have you got around you, how have you dealt with it yourself, what sort of accident were you in, was it did it involve other people being injured at the same time, was it your fault, was it somebody else's fault? There's a whole lot of things around there, just around the incident itself, and then your recovery, how much impact has it had on your day-to-day life, has it done things around that. So yeah, there's a whole lot of things like that really make this type of injury really unique to each person, and we've got to be able to map that in some way, and I don't think that sort of thing truly exists yet. So there's work to be done there. Brian, is there anything in that list that stands out for you that you think we should be hitting?
Thinking of the psychological things, the biggest thing for me was just like simplicity. Because typically when people don't have that 100% like cognitive load that everyone thinks about designing for, things have to be easier to use. And that's going to be incredibly hard when you're having something that's as complex as this, where everyone is a little bit different. How do you make that easy to configure without necessarily, taking away people's ability to change what they need to change?
I want to jump in here because there's a couple things that stand out to me from this list of, I guess, psychological conditions, and some that I think a lot of us can relate to. So things like depression, anxiety, fatigue, anger, all things that many of us have experienced during the duration of this global pandemic. Can you imagine, just for a second, what it might be like if on top of that, you were dealing with not being able to move parts of your body. That to me screams like, especially hard for those individuals right now in these times, in these unprecedented times. I think there's, it's like this compound effect of having everything going on right now, but then all this on top of it. And this is seminal research that has been around for a while on those with paraplegia. And so, the fact that just everything is compounding right now is, I don't know, it seems pretty heavy. And so coming back to the psychological side of things, when you actually do sort of come up with some solution like this, or a solution like we talked about earlier in last year, I guess, which we'll reference at the end, it was on the being able to control an exoskeleton with brain signals. When you come up with these type of solutions to this thing, it immediately gives that person back some agency that they were missing. And as little as it is, and we'll talk about some of the concerns, design considerations as it pertains to this technology here in just a minute. But as it relates to giving people back their agency, I think every little step absolutely helps. And that's just kind of awesome to see technology help reduce some of these issues with psychological conditions. So let's jump into the article. Normally, like I said, we usually do like a big, long breakdown of human factors issues. The psychological issues, I think we kind of covered. I do want to just kind of jump in and talk about what's going on here, because I think there is a lot to discuss as it relates to the way in which the interaction happens here. Mm-hmm. And so, Brian, I saw you in the chat. You put in some show notes. I want to make sure that we have that we talk about this, because you brought up a good point about haptics. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, so just the brain can be tricked by other senses kind of easily. So how can you use that here to really design a better experience? I know that you can put on VR glasses and touch something that looks cold because it's blue, and it's not even very realistic. It's pretty cartoony. But you can touch something hot and think it's cold because you see it being differently. And the same way that you can trick your brain to be eating a soggy chip. And as long as you hear that crunch the exact right time, you're going to think it's really crispy, which is kind of wild. So how do you do that when you're trying to design footsteps? That's going to be really hard, but it'd be crazy to see if someone could, I don't know, somehow implement some microphones on the feet or something. So then when you're using your limbs, it really does feel embodied to you and not like someone else is controlling it, because you feel like you're in control.
Yeah, I am drawing a blank on what that concept is. It's not the phantom concept or the phantom mirror. It's the one where you're pairing stimuli with something else, and yeah, it all comes back to that experience, right? It could ultimately make somebody's experience better using this type of thing if everything around that interaction seems more normal, all down to the sound and the feel. I do want to mention one point here. The way in which this works, because I think maybe it was mentioned in the blurb, but I do want to call attention to it. Basically, the way this works, it's not like the person is controlling a joystick on an app, moving them forward. They are selecting a mode, and then their legs do that based on the signals that the implant sends to their legs. So they have different modes, presumably for walk or cycle or swim, and the legs will just do those things. And so the body then has to sort of prepare for those changes. When you start walking, you sort of unconsciously lean forward because walking is controlled falling. And so those are types of things that you have to consider when you're engaging in these different modes, right? Start walk mode. Well, they need to be able to know when that feedback is coming to lean forward to get into the walk. I think the other thing of note here is that there are backup buttons on the device itself. So I guess we're talking about the implant here. I don't know if it's like sticking out of their back or if there's controls on the side or wherever those are reachable. There are presumably backup buttons, and I guess my question is, like, why aren't those the primary modes of switching, I guess, modes? It just makes the app part of it seems like a little much, unless those buttons are unreachable. And why would you not just design something that's on your person that's hardwired in, so that way you always have control, and you can start and stop whenever you want to and not have to worry about the lag that comes through an app. Anyway, these are just some things that I think of. Barry, you have a whole laundry list of items here. You want to go through some of it?
Yeah, so I mean, this follows on really nicely from what you were just saying around the design considerations, because again, the location of how you control this thing is going to be so key to what's going on and how you engage that. So this is one of the missing bits, I think, out of the article and the videos that we've seen, is exactly what the app interface looks like, where the control buttons are, because I think there's control buttons on the device. There's also control buttons on the walker that the man was using to when he was doing his walking. And so the location of where all these controls are is going to be absolutely key to making sure that it's an accessible and usable device from, because you're not going to have a perfect world all the time. You're probably going to fall over at some point, because we all fall over. So you need to be able, is it in place for recovery and things like that? Then you're going to have that strength versus weight issue. If you've got basically these exoskeleton legs that are so heavy that you then can't go in lifts, or you can't use normal, you create imprints in different material floors and things like that, or you get legs that are suddenly much stronger than you would actually have for normal use. It gives you I guess it will give you a feeling of something that maybe isn't quite right. How is it actually attached to the body? Is it something like it fits over your normal legs, and is it strapped in? So you're going to have to think about how is it strapped to the body? Do you get things like sores? How does it fit with the skin, and things like that? There's a lot of research into that already, where you have amputees using false limbs and things. How does that sort of thing work? But you're clamping this over a set of legs that are already there. They just don't work. So how does that fit in? And also the attachments that go into the spine themselves, because as you said, you've got that spine receptor. How do we make sure that stays medicinally clean, safe, and maintained? The materials that we get are going to be expensive. I mean, we see at the moment trying to get materials for doing this type of thing is going up because of the issues around the pandemic and all that type of thing. But then I think we keep on circling back to this interface consideration. And one of the big things that worries me more than anything else is almost it says it's being controlled by an app. That's great. And we see on the videos that somebody else has the tablet. And that's fine if you're controlling it and you can get yourself into the mode, right? I'm moving forward now. I'm going to start forward motion, go, you prepare your body, lean forward, all that sort of stuff. What happens if somebody else picks it up and just starts going? Your legs suddenly start going out from in front of you, and you're just motoring forward like you didn't read it, or back, or whatever it is. That concerns me about how you would either what would happen around that, but also how would you stop that from happening? Is there some level of security that we need to make sure that nobody else can walk off with your legs, basically? So I think it'd be interesting to see a lot of development around that app control. I think it'd be quite a key thing. Is there anything else that you've got, Nick, that you think that we should be bringing out?
Yeah, I was going to jump in. That's almost like a good segue into kind of the cybersecurity side of things. I think there's huge cybersecurity issues that you have to think about with this, and you just brought up one right there, right? If you're it's only as strong as your weakest link. If you have your phone unlocked and somebody grabs it and someone controls your legs with it, they could send you off in the other direction while they steal all your valuables. Like, to me, the app itself adds an unnecessary layer of controls that just I don't feel need to be there right now. Maybe as the technology advances and there's more advanced controls, 3 buttons won't do it, right? Cycle, swim, walk are no longer the controls. Maybe now I want to run, and I want to run at a certain miles per hour, and I want to, like, I don't know, I can think of different things. Like I want to walk at a slow pace, or adjusting my pace to walk next to somebody that I'm with, right? Like that might be where that app comes in handy later, where you can specify some certain parameters around your movement. For now, I think it does introduce a lot of those complex cybersecurity issues. On top of being losing your phone, there's also the potential of being hacked. And why would anybody want to hack people? Well, I think there's a lot of good reason. I just said it. If you can effectively brick somebody and have them immobile, then you could almost without consequence go up and do anything to them. You could harm them. You could steal their stuff. You could hold them ransom. I think there's a lot to consider with that. And I don't know. You guys have any other points on cybersecurity? Brian, any thoughts?
I don't have on cybersecurity, but I do on the app, because I do think that as it is right now, maybe the app isn't super useful, but using phones is one of the key ways blind people navigate these days. They use their phone for everything, for screen readers, for like just navigation, for letting people know what's in their hand and stuff. And so adding that phone Bluetooth into this, I could see as being leveraged really well in the future. It does require a lot of security, but that's the same thing for other things. Like if you steal someone's phone, that's just where bodily autonomy is going to have to be huge and very important.
Barry, any last comments on this story?
Yeah, I think just to sort of wrap both of them up, I think the cybersecurity issue is significant, and it might not be anything truly malicious in that respect as well. But could you imagine having a so either you've got it or your friends one of your friends are using this. You all have a few drinks, they're having a party, and then somebody decides it's a fun idea to nick the to take the screen, the tablet, and have a go with your mate's legs and see what's going on. So it could be as simple as that would seem one of these things funny at the time, but actually be quite a traumatic experience. So I think this idea of the open architectures and stuff like that is, yes, it's got a lot there, but it does need to be thought about quite a lot. Fundamentally, I still think it's a very exciting thing, and it's clearly the leading edge of some really, really, really inspirational research. But I think it's got a long way to go before it's actually truly something that can be seen as something available on the market.
Yeah, I agree. Brian, any last thoughts on this one?
No, I think we just about covered it.
Yeah, for me, I think we brought up a lot of issues with the design of the app and sort of the practical nature of having something like this. I was honestly worried that we wouldn't have enough content to cover, but I think, just about beat this thing into the ground. So thank you to our patrons this week for selecting the topic, and thank you to our friends over at Futurism and NBC News for our news story this week. If you want to follow along, we do post the links to all the original articles on our weekly roundups on our blog. You can also join us on our Slack or Discord for more discussion on these stories. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back to see what's going on in the Human Factors community right after this.
Human Factors Cast brings you the best in human factors news, interviews, conference coverage, and overall fun conversations into each and every episode we produce. But we can't do it without you. The Human Factors Cast network is 100% listener supported. All the funds that go into running the show come from our listeners. Our patrons are our priority, and we want to ensure we're giving back to you for supporting us. Pledges start at just $1 per month and include rewards like access to our weekly Q&As with the hosts, personalized professional reviews, and Human Factors Minute, a Patreon-only weekly podcast where the hosts break down unique, obscure, and interesting human factors topics in just 1 minute. Patreon rewards are always evolving, so stop by patreon.com/humanfactorscast to see what support level may be right for you. Thank you, and remember, it depends.
Yes, huge thank you as always to our patrons. Especially want to thank our honorary Human Factors Cast staff patron, Michelle Tripp. And I do want to mention, a couple shows ago, I guess we said, we were just a couple patrons away from being self-sustaining. And hey, we did it! Thank you to all of our patrons. Everything going forward, I want to let you all know what's going on with the support that you are giving to us. Everything that we get going forward is going to be put back into the show in one way or another, and some exciting ways. We kind of have a roadmap for where that support goes long term. We're not pocketing the money at this point. We are kind of putting it into other things. Like I said, we'll put it into some more advanced transcription software that will sort of make this more accessible for the hearing impaired. And so there's other pathways that we are going to use your support to help bring the show to other people. I do want to mention that Patreon has some other fun stuff too. We always mention the Human Factors Minute, but we do have full audio versions of the podcast. But what does that mean? Normally, we do a pre-show and a post-show that you wouldn't get unless you're watching our live streams or check them out after the fact. But you do get that as an audio version if you're a patron. We do host weekly Q&As, so a lot of times we'll get some questions from our patrons that we prioritize for the show. And then we also early access to the show by a couple hours. So, I produce that one first, send it out, and kind of wait on the other one. And so our patrons get the show first, and it's the full version first. So there's that. And then we also have bonus content that we release from time to time. So like when we did our full revamp of our nice, pretty logo you see everywhere. Our patrons saw everything, including all the design process in those. So yes, huge thank you as always to our patrons. They keep the show running, literally. Thank you all so much for your continued support. Let's go ahead and get into this next part of the show.
It came from...
That's right. Let's switch gears, get to It Came From. This week is a little interesting. So last week on the show, our audio got cut off right at the tail end of our It Came Froms. We got like the reading of this in, but I edited that out for obvious reasons because our answers weren't in. So we have 3 tonight. One of them is from Reddit. The other 2 actually came from Discord. So this will be fun. Let's get into this first one here. It's from Kaiju Corgi on the user experience subreddit. They write, "Hey all, I'm a career changer in UX, and despite a lot of effort, I've recently reached the long-term unemployment zone." There's a lot of context here. I'm going to skip over some of it, but basically, their question here is, how can I solve some of my assumed weaknesses as a UX applicant? They're having a difficult time, obviously, applying for, getting a job in that long-term unemployment zone. They go through a lot of different assumptions here about what they think might be holding them back and some, things they might do to address some of those issues. But I want to ask you guys, and I'll start with Barry on this one since you answered this last week. I want to ask you, Barry, how would you tackle that long-term unemployment? And I don't know, how do you sort of self-reflect?
Well, touch wood so far, then I'm lucky enough not to have had that significant period of unemployment, but I've certainly talked and worked with a number of people who have. And fundamentally, it's about, you just got to try and keep yourself relevant. And it's a difficult thing to do because the Kaiju Corgi sort of highlights that they've been, their job gap is 2 years long, which is quite a significant period of time. They've sort of got their one big case study that they keep on giving out, and really if you're not being employed, then there is voluntary work to do. There is the engagement in community. There is just putting yourself out there. That you can try and get on with, but you've also got to keep your mental agility up, I guess, or basically your motivation going, because it can be quite depressing. Quite, you've got nowhere else to go. You keep on just looking in on yourself, so you've got to try and work at keeping yourself motivated. The flip side is true as well, though, that if actually you're getting good positive experience, but you're still not getting the jobs, are you going for the right sort of jobs? Are you should you be broadening your scope maybe to something that isn't just straight looking at sort of UX? Because actually UX is a small facet of the entire gamut of human factors and ergonomics. Could you be broadening your outlook a bit, and fundamentally just keep going at it? Because certainly right at this moment in time in the UK, so if you're listening from the UK, this is really useful. There are more human factors jobs out there than there are human factors practitioners, and so in many ways just keep going with it. But it's hard work. It's not an easy thing to do, and having worked with a few people as a mentor to try and get them through that period, it's that mental battle, I think, that is the hardest thing to deal with and keep going. What about you, Nick? Have you got experience in this area?
I don't have experience in the long-term unemployment zone. I will just echo a couple points here. I think you answered pretty similarly to how you did last week. There's a couple points that I want to make here. One is that I think this person who's commented on this Reddit post, I think they're already on the right track of kind of looking at that. Self-reflecting is really important. But the other piece of it that I think is also really important is staying engaged. There are things in which you can do that are still kind of, I don't know, you're engaging with your community. And so if you go to conferences in the UX or human factor space, if you go to if you're part of sort of these committees that happen, you can still sort of professionally continue your career and do stuff meaningful to a society or an organization that might sort of fill in some of those long-term unemployment gaps. You also network through those things. And I know it's hard right now because everything's virtual, but going to those events, and I know it's kind of sunken cost because if you don't have a job, you're probably tight on money. But going to a conference can really, really help, especially when you get face-to-face with other people. You never know who you're going to say, oh, hey, I'm hiring. Oh, also, by the way, Human Factors Cast Discord channel, someone's hiring, so go check that out. And so, there are avenues that you can do, that you can look into, especially for trying to keep up that continued effort, involvement in your profession. I'm going to shut up now. I want to hear what Brian has to say about this.
Yeah, so I kind of want to talk about Barry's point for a second, where he said, there's a lot of different ways you can go into UX, and I think that's really true. Me and my partner both went to the same grad school, but I'm a UX designer and she's a UX researcher. I have a design background, she has a psych background. So where really are your strengths? And then kind of figure out where you can go there. And then with Nick, there are a lot of really awesome virtual conferences that you can go to for free. That is one good thing that the pandemic has done, is that there's a lot more virtual free events than there were previously. And yeah, it's not necessarily as good as face-to-face, but you can still talk to a lot of people. You can still make an impact and make some friends. And one of the things they said was that they had a strong idea for a local nonprofit, but if they did the work, they'd still need to find a dev, and high risk, high reward. But do they need a dev? No, I think that's awesome to go figure out a good volunteer opportunity and get a really good portfolio piece from that. Even if nothing comes from it, you can still say, I worked with this company, I did this work, here's this awesome work. And that plus polish on the portfolio, I think that's one of the biggest things. You really do need to crank that thing up to 11 because people don't look at it for very long. I know one thing I had to do after I graduated, because I graduated in December of 2019. And then I took a few months off to work on my portfolio, and then the pandemic happened. So I certainly understand applying to jobs in the middle of the pandemic. It's not fun. But if you can work on that portfolio and take those projects even further, that really helps out a lot.
Yeah, good answers. All right, let's get into this next one here. This one's actually from our Discord, from Vanessa, who is also a patron. So I want to read this one in full here. If anyone can speak to this, please let me know. I was lucky to be offered a user experience research internship last semester. I am currently in an internship that is a bit outside of the human factors scope. I am now also being considered for a government agency VR-centric internship. My question is, does it look better to have a mix of lab and internship experience, or to learn more heavily or lean more heavily into one or the other? And so I want to pass this over to Brian first. Do you have any experience with a mix of lab and internship work, and what's kind of your opinion on this?
I mean, my opinion is, what do you want to do afterwards with it? If you really want to work for like some sort of lab, then go for that lab work. But if you want to work for a different type of company, go for that internship. I think that's kind of my biggest thing. I had a little bit of lab consultancy testing, but I think having that internship at a different company also gives you that edge. What are your thoughts, Barry?
I think that if it's one of these things, if they know exactly what it is they want to do and they've got a driving passion to go and do this one thing, go with whatever suits that closest. However, unless you've got that drive, then do whatever you can to mix it up, because having a broad range of experiences, certainly as early on in your career as you can, you might go in thinking, I'm going to do X, but actually you think, oh, I've just found that I want to do this instead. I mean, that's kind of how it was for me when I first started. You know, my background is in command and control engineering, but there was this one module on the course that was all around GUI design at that point, and so graphical user interfaces that were programmed in C in like many years ago, and I was like, actually, this is really good fun, and that one little bit then spiraled into other stuff. So for me, it's about getting as broad a range of experiences as possible. So I would go for anything you can do to mix it up, and that will give you a broader life experience to then go and make some decisions that you don't really need to make for another year or so, or a couple of years yet.
Yeah, I'll kind of recite my answers with maybe a little bit of elaboration. So I am also go for the mix, because you never know what skills are going to be applicable to your end job, right? You might have a situation where maybe as an internship they give you a little bit more, agency within the company. You also, in a lab, you might actually have some project management going on if you are a grad student. And so think about these types of things. Think about what types of skills you can get from each of these opportunities and kind of how they sort of play into your end goal. And it could really help. Like, let's say you do ultimately want to get into VR. Well, then I would look into that VR internship, because it makes it a lot easier to jump from VR to VR than, I don't know, say like automotive design to VR. It could be the difference between getting into the field and not. That's just my 2 cents. We have time for one more. Let's get into this one. This one's by Vianney, also a patron in our Discord. Go figure. Vianney writes, what does everyone think about coursework master's degree versus thesis master's degree? Would the former be sufficient if I'm just looking to enrich myself with human factors knowledge to apply for a human factors related job? Or should I pursue a thesis master's degree? Barry, how do things work in the UK? And do they have a non-thesis option in grad school? Do you know?
Yeah, no, we do. You can either do a talk master's or a research master's, which I think is basically the equivalent. And Amanda, my wife, is doing her human factors talk masters right now. So, and that was a deliberate decision that we both talked about. We both went through and looked at the pros and cons. But because we met at university, how cute. We both got this engineering background, and since she's been part of the business for so long, she finally decided she wanted to learn some human factors stuff. And I was like, well, there's no point, from my belief, there's no point in going to try and do a research master's if you're wanting to learn skills. So I would strongly encourage the idea of going down this going down a taught masters. The difference in the UK is currently there is no undergraduate degrees for human factors at all. There was one or two, they've now dried up, and so you have to go and get a first degree, and then to get your human factors degree, you then have to. They're all masters, regardless. There's some work going on around degree apprenticeships, but that's coming in the future. So I would go down the coursework masters, unless you want to go and do a research human factors job. Then obviously that then goes into that. So I just got in that the quick it depends at the end.
Yeah,
Brian, let's hear from you.
So, I mean, my incredibly biased answer is that I got a coursework master's, and that's worked very well in the market professionally. However, I didn't want to become a PhD. I didn't want to go to that next research level. If you do, then look at the thesis. But otherwise, I think the coursework is just as good, if not better, because I have heard it's easier. Of course, I only took one, not two, so I don't have any comparison. But it seems to work very well in the market. And so, yeah, I wouldn't really worry about it. What do you think, Nick?
Yeah, you guys stole my answers. Look, I think it really does come down to it depends. And I actually put this in our Discord. I made a big it depends button because it really does on what the outcome you want from it is. If you're unsure where you want to go, whether it's academia or industry, then I would say err on the side of caution and go with the thesis, because that will give you sort of the appreciation for the, rigor that it takes to do scientific research. And you will always kind of have that option to continue your line of research in academia. And it's still a pretty relatively easy jump into industry, thesis or not. If you are dead set on being industry, you know for sure you don't want to be in academia, I would say go with the self-taught non-thesis option, because then you're saving yourself time, because a lot of theses are not done in 2 years. You can get in and out with coursework in 2 years, and that's time that you won't get back. So unless you're super passionate about it. All right, that'll do it for It Came Froms this week. Let's just get into this next part of the show we like to call One More Thing. Brian, it's been a while since we have caught up with you. What is your one more thing this week?
Yeah, my one more thing is the MIT Reality Hack. An XR hackathon is back. So I'll be going to that in March, and I'm super excited to actually see other humans in a masked and vaccinated area, but also get to play with a bunch of cool headsets and tech.
Can you please come back on the show and tell us all about that?
Yeah, sure.
That sounds awesome.
It was a good time last time. I'm sure it'll be great this time too.
Barry, what's your one more thing this week?
Well, I'm going to go for my usual thing and have a twofer. But in that, just yesterday I presented with HFES on climate ergonomics. So if you're a member of HFES and you can go back and see the recording of that, please go do so. It was a whole heap of fun. But more importantly, the LA Rams won the Super Bowl. Woo! Hence our Rams talk. There we go. What was interesting for me about this, it took me 2 days to watch, because obviously here in the UK, it was a 11:30 kickoff, 11:30 at night kickoff. But then I couldn't work out whether to sleep beforehand and then watch the game, or watch the game and then sleep, because I was away. I was in a hotel because I was doing some user trials the next day, and so I sort of did the worst of both worlds. I watched it up to half time, then fell asleep, and then so the next morning woke up and I was like, fine, I can watch it on. I can watch that. But then I had meetings first thing in the morning, so I got to with 10 minutes to go. I had to stop, go and do my business meetings for the day, then drive home, and then watch the last 5 minutes, which were a very exciting 5 minutes of the game, basically that evening. And I never got to actually see the halftime show until last night. So it's taken me a long time just to watch this game, but fundamentally, go Rams. Nick, what about
I gotta ask you, hang on, I want to pull the thread. We have a little bit of time left. I want to pull the thread on this halftime show thing, and I want to get your thoughts on this, because this is something that's so interesting to me, because you have two different generations claiming that this was their show. You have the Gen X people and you have the millennials, who are both claiming that this was built for them. And to me, it's interesting because, one, there's sort of this generational tug of war going on, and trying to claim ownership of something that I think sort of the younger Gen X and elder millennials both experienced around the same time. Mm-hmm. And to me, that's just fascinating that we categorize these things in a way that's, I don't know, it just putting, I guess we as scientists and people in general like to put things into buckets. I don't know. What are your thoughts on it? Brian, did you watch the halftime show? Do you think it makes sense to bucket this?
I did watch the halftime show, and I think the most appropriate bucket is if it related to you, you're old now. That's kind of just what happens.
I'm leaving.
I mean, I saw it and I loved it, and I was like, ooh, I guess I am old now. I don't think that, the divide really makes a whole lot of sense, but we do like to group people whether we should or not.
Yeah. Barry, what are your thoughts on that whole generational divide?
Yeah, well, I think it was an interesting, because we've now got artists that span such a long period as well, that I think the artists we're on did generally span the sort of the end of the sort of the Gen X into the millennial and that type of thing. So it was brilliant to watch, and I think it was just fun. I mean, my kids sort of watched it as well, and they're like, sort of, what comes after millennial? Gen Y? Gen Z, isn't it? Yeah,
Gen Z.
Go that way. And so even they were sort of saying, oh, actually, no, some of their music was ours as well. So, and you're like going, no, it's definitely not yours. So no, it was good. I mean, what was also good to see around that show was more people enjoying themselves. With what we've been through. I don't know. Did you see it and just think, oh, that's a lot of people together in a very small space, not wearing masks? You sort of have this almost shock reaction now every time you see a thing. Because what was also cool was, because I watched it on YouTube, and it then automatically on the playlist jumped straight into some of the previous years, and I think it went back to Super Bowl 50, and there was just loads of people. Lots and lots and lots of people crammed in doing this, and it was like, "Oh, you won't get that nowadays."
Yeah, can you believe we used to do some of that stuff? Just a new person, shake their hand without even, crazy.
I know, but fundamentally, still go Rams.
There you go. My one more thing this week is I guess, I don't know, interesting. So it's also tough to talk about because I mentioned on the show a couple last month that I was seeking. I talked about my therapist in the pre-show, but I am now medicated for what I suspect was ADHD, and I am pretty sure that's the case after taking some of these meds. They've taken a while to kick in. However, I have had the most productive 2 weeks of my life the last 2 weeks. I am it's like so much more attentive to everything going on. And this even goes back to the show that Barry and I did last week, but was planned for the previous week. So I guess that's 2 weeks now. I had actually done the show notes on a Wednesday night because I looked at the polls and said, okay, yeah, it's probably going to be this show. It's not going to really change. And I went through, I did all the show notes. I said, hey, Barry, here you go. I scared him away. And then we didn't do the show the next day. And so the show notes were ready for a week. But yeah, I mean, I've just come off of the best 2 weeks, both professionally and personally in my own life, with getting everything organized. Like I guess, doing dishes and cleaning the living room are no longer issues for me because I'm not in my head about something else. And same thing with doing things for the podcast. And some days are better than others. But anyway, all this to say, it's just a PSA to go. If you think something, or maybe you're like, do everybody suffer like this? Does everybody function this way? Maybe talk to somebody about it. And if you need to talk to somebody about their experience, feel free to reach out to me on the Slack or Discord. Happy to talk about mine with you. So with that PSA out of the way, that's going to be it for today, everyone. Let us know what you guys think of of the story this week. If you like the discussion about the psychology behind sort of the paraplegia and controlling your body with other devices, then go listen to episode 205. That's where Blake and Elise broke down driving exoskeletons with brain signals. Really interesting stuff. Comment wherever you're listening with what you think of the story this week. For more in-depth discussion, you can always join us on our Discord community. We actually started a voice chat earlier this week. It was fun. You can always visit our official website, sign up for our newsletter, stay up to date with all the latest Human Factors news. If you like what you hear, you want to support the show, there's a couple ways you can do that. One, you can leave us a 5-star review. Wherever you're at right now, just hit that 5-star, leave us a review, tell other people it's good. 2, tell your friends about us. Word of mouth is really how we grow. And 3, if you're able to, consider supporting us on Patreon. We do put all that money right back into the show. Might actually help others find the show for things like, AI transcription services. As always, links to all our socials are in the website are going to be in the description of this episode. I want to thank Mr. Brian McDonald for being on the show today, this year, I guess I should say. Where can our listeners go and find you if they want to hear more from you?
Yeah, well, since I have a very generic name, I like to throw my middle initial in there. So on pretty much all the things, on Twitter, I'm Brian C. McDonald, LinkedIn the same, and my website is briancmcdonald.com.
Easy enough. I want to thank Mr. Barry Kirby for being on the show today. Where can our listeners go and find you?
I'm around on Twitter and other socials, but fundamentally I'm at Baz_K, and check me out on my podcast at 1202 The Human Factors Podcast, 1202podcast.com.
As for me, I've been your host, Nick Roome. You can find me across social media at Nick_Roome. Thanks again, everyone, for tuning into Human Factors Cast. Until next time, it depends. Hey, if you're sticking around, if you're watching live, stick around with us. We're gonna do some stuff in the post show here. Yeah, there we go.
Coordinated, it depends between 3 people. Now that's a challenge.
Yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot.
Yeah, I actually muted myself for that because I didn't want to mess up things.
I totally miscalculated time on this one. I don't know what happened. We were like 10 minutes early. I was like, what the hell? It was okay though. It was a good show. Good show.
Yeah, it was. What was really interesting was I think all 3 of us had a different view on how the device was being controlled from the same article, which I thought was just I think we all described it in a slightly different way, and it just showed that actually there was not much description on the actual control, just that it was app control.
Yeah, it needed a lot of videos to really showcase what was going on.
But I think maybe they didn't want to do that because they realized it was ropey or whatever, or because it's still very much research. But it's I think what scared me most was on one of the videos they sort of show how they put all the spine stuff in. And they were just like, oh yes, we just slide the spine receptors up and down. It's like, don't you just slide spine receptors up my spine? That sounds ridiculous.
It's a rather simple procedure of slicing.
Yeah, spines are easy and hard to break, right?
Yeah, just
it's broken already. What are they gonna do? Break it more?
WD-40,
Yeah.
That's really insensitive.
It's a bit like when you watch. I don't know if you have the sort of these things that show you surgical procedures and stuff. Most surgical procedures I kind of not really got a problem with. It's when they start with metal work and they start putting sort of drilling into things, and they basically just get a Bosch drill and just start drilling into things. And you're like, but just no, how?
Yeah, I did my undergrad senior thesis on total knee replacement, so I had to watch a bunch of those.
Ooh,
and
nice.
It really is like they just take a saw, and then that's step 1.
Yeah, it's.
I don't know. Do you that brings up an interesting point? So when you all have work done on you, do you prefer to look up the procedure before or after, or not at all during that process? Right. So I'll give you all an example while you're thinking of it. Last year I got a root canal, and I generally knew what it was. Right. They kind of dig out the dead cavities on your tooth and fill them up and put a crown on that tooth. And but I didn't I was very torn on whether or not I wanted to watch it beforehand or after. And I ultimately came down on... sorry, I'm getting some phantom pain in my tooth because it was such a traumatic experience. But I ultimately came down on watching it before because I wanted to be informed as to what they were doing and when. And so when they were digging down in my root canal and the medication wasn't working, the numbing wasn't working, I could feel every little bit of that. I knew exactly what they were doing. And I guess I'm thankful for that. Because it kind of gave me that insight in the moment. I was like, okay, I know what they're doing. So I'll pass it back to you guys. Do you prefer to look up those procedures beforehand or after? Or not at all?
Well, I think for me, generally, because I've had root canal as well, and I sort of knew what they were doing because they give me, they go and do the prep bit, and then you go in and you come back. And they sort of give me a card with, right, this is basically what we're doing with graphic diagrams, and I was fine. Okay, I didn't go to that same level of like go and look on YouTube or whatever for the procedures. I've had a couple of other procedures done where I definitely didn't look up beforehand what it was about. I just let them get on with it. I guess the one where I did look up because it's only because I had a decision to make, really, was around my knee, because I had my ACL stretch tear, but it hadn't quite torn all the way through, so we had to make a decision on whether do we leave it to repair itself, because clearly I'm an athlete, and that was the way my doctor put it. He goes, well, Mr. Kirby, you're clearly not an athlete, so we could just leave it. And I was like, you cheeky so-and-so. Yeah, okay, fair comment. So I did do the research, and actually a friend of ours was a surgeon as well, so I could sort of say, look, can you tell me what's going to happen? And they were like, well, to be honest, if they go in with your age and stuff, then the chance of you're getting arthritis is way more for doing it, because they've just gone into your knee and done it. If you can leave it just to repair, given that you're not an athlete, I'm like, thanks for rubbing it in, then it will be fine for everyday use. And they were generally right. It's thankfully it's never fully torn. It's weaker. But I'm not sprinting or playing rugby or any silly games like that. So I did mess it up though at the back end of, it must have been November last year, when I was doing this weight loss thing, and a colleague at work said, oh, does anyone like squash or badminton or anything like that? I used to love squash as a kid. Now I'm losing weight and becoming fitter. Then I'll come and play squash. He didn't tell me that he played squash for the region. I was expecting just knocking around the squash court. And so within 4 minutes, I felt my knee go. And now the sensible person at this point turns around and says, oh, I'm terribly sorry, I've got a bad knee and it's just gone. We should stop. Unfortunately, 40 minutes later, I just decided to keep on going. And yeah, then which was sort of fine. The next morning, I just couldn't walk. So,
nice.
Yeah, me and medical things, I'm not a fan.
Yeah, Brian, what about you? Do you prefer to look stuff up before, after? Not at all.
If it's something important where I actually need to make a decision, definitely look it up. For minor things, I like to look it up too, even though I'm a baby and I can't even look at someone giving me a shot. I still want to know how it works. But I'll look up one video, figure out how it works, and then I'm done. Yeah,
that's kind of how I am too. I had one procedure where I didn't have a chance to look it up because it was a life-threatening situation. So I had an appendectomy back in 2016. Because, it's just this pain in my stomach. It's like, oh my God, it really hurts. It really hurts. Oh, geez, I don't know what's going on. Sitting in the bathtub, just my wife is like, hey, you should, we need to go to urgent care. And I was like, no, I'm fine. It's probably just constipation. I don't know what's going on. It's one of those things. And we ended up going to urgent care, and they were like, yeah, you have appendicitis. I was like, oh, what? Okay. What does that mean? And, the memories that follow that conversation with that urgent care nurse doctor, I went to the emergency room. They triaged me because it could have been really bad if it exploded. And so I remember getting my blood drawn. I had just eaten, I was on keto at the time, so I just had eaten cheese blocks for lunch. You can see where this is going. And they took my blood. I got really queasy. I kind of passed out and woke up with cheese blocks all over my my body. So that was one memory, and then like a flash into the my wife laughing about me throwing up and passing out, and then a quick I guess flash of memory into the MRI machine, a quick flash of me signing a document saying, yes, I give you permission to dig around in my stomach and take that thing out. And then some more vivid memories of the recovery room afterwards. And I don't know if I've still, even to this day, I know roughly what they did, but I haven't looked up the procedure yet about an appendectomy. So that's fun. It's fun. So
you didn't go to Dr. YouTube before you went to the actual doctor?
No, because I didn't even know it was appendicitis in the moment, and that it was. They had told me if I had waited just a couple hours more, it could have gotten really bad to the point where it was life threatening, because it was like very close to rupturing.
Yeah. And
when that happens, it's bad news.
Then where would this show be?
Yeah, well, I don't know. It's a good question.
I think keeps me up at night.
Yeah, just realised as well, because I do this, I have Restream on half of my screen, and I have the show notes on the other half of the screen.
Hey, me too.
That's why I never see the chat thing. Is because I always keep the external chat open to see if anybody's put any comments in. And so I've just clicked on the private chat because now I've made this full screen because I've taken the show notes away. Seeing you guys were all having a nice chat, and I'm like, okay, fair enough.
Oh, you don't get the chat? Because I have half a screen, but I still get the chat.
It sort of splits the thing into three for me, so I can either see the like I said, the external chat on the streams, or I can see the private chat. But it also doesn't have it should have a little icon there to say there's new chat, and it doesn't.
See, that's so weird, because I have like a little chat bubble at the bottom of my screen. It's separate from the chat that the
same messing with the screen width. I think we are on larger screens, so half of our screen gives us a different view.
Hold on, yeah, I am shrinking mine now. Ah, yes, I see what you're talking about, Barry. Okay, yeah, it definitely buries that our chat.
Well, that begs the question: what size screens are you guys on? How big is yours?
I don't know. Yeah, it's not about the size of the screen.
Mine's just a 32.
Yeah, I'm 32 as well. I have a 32 in the front. I have a 3-headed display. I have a 32 in front, and then 2 side monitors that are 20 each, and they're the same model.
I can't remember what these are. A big one. I thought they were 36s. I thought they were 2 36s.
Maybe it's a lower resolution.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah, it could be. But, no, for friend of mine who I work with, he's got one of these new super wide screens that just sit, and on the I sort of had screen envy for a while, because you can sort of nicely chop that up into sections and stuff like that, and treat it like multiple screens in a big way. But actually, I've got 2 decent sized screens that are curved that actually fit my desk a lot better. So that's my excuse, just to make myself feel better. Also, mine
super wide because it was harder to section. But I guess maybe if they fix that.
Well, this was the Samsung one, and it seems to work really, really well. So
it's okay. I'm gonna forget that, so I don't buy anything.
Yeah, there is a bit of that. So,
hey Brian, I want to ask you something. So you have been, I guess, a listener for a while too. You listen to the show. You said just the other day that you listened to about half of them.
Yeah.
And I'm curious to hear from your perspective. What has been sort of one of your favorite episodes over the last, I don't know, year or so? Sorry to put you on the spot, but like, I'm curious. Like, what shows are performing better? This is my way of getting like direct feedback that will help produce better shows.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's all like topic based.
Right.
Like our virtual conference is more inclusive. Whenever you guys talk about like VR stuff,
Yeah, I have wondered that. Like, is our podcast something that people listen to on a topic to topic basis? Where, like, you know, there's podcasts like Stuff You Should Know, where they will go over very specific details about very specific topics. And, you know, for me, when I listen to them, it's very much like, oh, does that topic interest me or not? And if so, then I'll listen to it. Then there are other shows that cover the news on a weekly basis that I listen to fairly regularly. And that's how I've always kind of thought about this show. But the way you're talking about it is almost making me think maybe people do just tune into certain topics.
well, can I say it depends? Because
you did it.
because like I
You know
used
what?
to listen to all of them, and then for some reason in grad school I like didn't have much time, and shockingly got a little bit burnt. So then I like kind of stopped, and now like I have such a backlog. I listen to like most weeks, but it's also like, ooh, this one seems like an interesting topic. I'm gonna jump back here.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I have a fun graphic for y'all. I put this together the other day. Boom, there you go.
Yeah.
What I need to do.
Logo.
I want to try and get a sound effect that I can put on my on one of my pads here, so I can just every time we do it, I can just hit it and we can get a sound effect. But nobody's done a convenient 50-pen sound effect that I can steal, so I'm gonna have to get one made.
You should do the sad horns or I forget. It's like from I think it's the either Sadtron. Oh, Price is Right losing horn. Do that one. Bum, bum, ba-dum, bum. Or
I've got this one. Hold on. Is it? It's because you nearly got this earlier when we talked about things. I did a whole lot of this. But yeah, that's the closest I've got to.
That's a good one.
you should jump in with those. You could be like that quirky board operator on some of those morning radio shows.
I just realised I haven't taken off some of the others, so we do have options. We do have we do have a bit of
Barry, I will give you full license to use those in the pre-show and the post-show. If you want to insert one into the show, yeah, that's what I was thinking of. If you want to insert one into the regular show, let me know, and we can see if we can fit it in. But pre-show, post-show, feel free. If you find a comedic moment,
you could do a comedic Human Factors radio show. Human Factors and the Zoo this morning.
You're listening to KHFC. I'm your host, Rockin' Nick Roome.
That sounded like too rehearsed. That is like you moonlight, don't you?
Well, you know. My parents both have a history in radio, and so I grew up listening to all those, all the DJ slang, and sort of the station IDs that get really obnoxious, and you know, I know that side of things pretty well from my upbringing.
Cool. So I guess what's the backstory of podcasting for Human Factors?
Oh yeah, you want the origin story?
Yeah, the origin story.
Yeah, I've told it a couple times, but it's been a while, so we can talk about it. My origin story for the podcast was very much an instance where I was commuting to a job about 4 hours a day, and I was like, oh man, this would be a great time to listen to podcasts on human factors. So I looked, I didn't see anything, and I was like, oh shit, am I gonna do this? I'm gonna do this. So I did it, and you know, I had a buddy who, Billy, he was on the show very early on. He was not Human Factors, but he was a friend of mine who really was into radio and wanted to kick something up. And he was kind of the one that I feel encouraged me to look into doing a podcast. And so yeah, we started it, and it was something. The first couple episodes, I will say, that we kind of got an awkward start. If you go back and listen to those now, it's just like, two people in a basement reading off of a friggin' textbook,
With starting things from scratch hard or something?
Yeah, it's weird, right? And then, we quickly realized that approach was unsustainable, because it was like, well, there's only so much subject topic that you could talk about. There's also a massive amount of research to be done week to week, right? Like, we're fortunate enough now that we no longer have to choose the stories. Our patrons do that for us. And really, it's just us to come up with some high-level concepts that we can relay. And so, we switched to that news format, early 20s, when we were in our early 20 episodes in, or something like that. I think it's 23. Anyway, we changed to the news about then, and it slowly changed over time. We used to do, 3 or 4 news stories per week. And that was fun. It was jumping around a lot. And I don't know, I felt like we weren't doing the stories justice. There were some of those ones that were just like one-liners. It was like, I don't really have much to say about this. And I frequently found, both Blake and I thought that, we would like to spend more time on some of those news stories that was, maybe just a little bit more juicy. We could really just talk about it at length. And so I think somewhere in the hundreds we made that switch, where, we had been doing the 3 a week for, I guess, a couple years. Anyway, leading us to today now, where we don't even pick our news story anymore. Our patrons choose it, and I think that's kind of a good way to approach it, because it's audience choice. It's not like we're picking redundant things. When I look for news stories on the weekly basis, I'm looking for a variety of topics and just kind of let the general audience pick it. And yeah, we kind of just do those high-level concepts, kind of like we did tonight with the psychological impacts of paraplegic. And I don't know, is that the origin story you were looking for? I feel like I'm rambling here.
You're rambling, but that is the story. So, yeah. Oh, and then I guess your history with like your parents made you think of just like, I can talk.
Yeah, I mean, it's like funny.
That sounds like English. It is now.
Funny enough, I never really considered myself to go into radio. I had not. That's not something I really wanted to do. It's just not really interesting to me from the perspective of like working at a radio station and putting on music, and or I did work as a board operator for a while with my dad, and I was basically just doing what I do here behind the scenes, turning on and off some of these it's this stuff, it's turning that on, layout. I mean, layout is not really on the radio, but you get what I'm saying, right? It's doing this stuff behind the scenes while you're micromanaging stuff going on. I'm also looking at the clock to make sure that we're not running late on certain topics, kind of carrying the show from one thing to another, letting the people who are talking know what's going on. That's the role of a board operator, and I've done that, and that makes it very easy to produce this show. From my perspective, I can both host and do the board operation, which is great because I don't have to rely on anybody else. And then sort of the way I speak, the way I communicate, I've picked up from my parents, and I feel like that aspect of it kind of just bled through, as like learned by. You're raised by wolves, you're going to be a wolf. You're raised by DJs, you're gonna have some natural tendencies to focus on communication.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's a lot.
Yeah. Board operator is cool. I did a little bit of that when I was at Bentley, my school, because there was like the research center, and just like we'd sometimes have people sit in like this sort of auditorium and stream our like remote sessions with all of our cameras set up.
Cool.
Because they had an actual lab. And then I've never had a lab since.
Oh man.
Now I'm my own researcher.
You know what I want to do? One of these years, when we go to HFES, or who knows, maybe someday CIEHF, I'd love to go to whatever conferences they put on. One thing I've always wanted to do is kind of like a live stream of the conference. Just, hey, who's around? Hey, come over here. What are you enjoying about the conference? You know, sit down with me for 5-10 minutes. What's going on? Who did you see today? Did you run into Chris Wickens while you were at a urinal? I did. That was fun. You know, like those types of things. And, you know, to have kind of like a live feed of the conference going on in one of these views, right? So it might be like, hey, there's a live feed of the conference going on like this, right? Where you have, you know, the logo there is the live feed, and you have like people talking down here. You have multicams, so I could turn on and off a camera, and it'd be like, oh yeah, here's what's going on. You know,
especially
in
this like kind of virtual or hybrid scenario where you can have people like streaming potentially from conferences. You can then be like, well, none of them are really what I want. Let me go see what the random chatter cam is.
Right, exactly. It's like, you know, I don't know. I really enjoyed our presence at HFES 2018. I think that was one of my highlights as a podcaster, as human factors professional. Is, you know, it's one of the things that I look back on fondly, because we were like speed networking with a bunch of really awesome people, and we seldom had time to actually go to panels that we wanted to go to. Because we were always sitting at our booth, and people would come up to us and be like, hey, you're the Human Factors guys. Yeah, I've heard your show. And I feel like that would be so much different now, because, you know, we've been tracking our growth, and we're growing. And so I feel like, you know, we've got our name out there in quite a few places now, and I feel like it would be a much different experience if we were to ask people to come over and tell us, you know, about what they're experiencing at the conference now versus 4 years ago. My goodness.
Yeah.
Look at me, living in my glory days.
Yeah, I've hoped to be doing that at the CIHF conference this year. So we're gonna be hanging out and have our own little booth at the EHF 2022. So we've got a 2-day. So we've got 2-day virtual conference and a 2-day live conference. So the virtual one start of April, and then the live bit is at the end. So should be quite interesting. Should be quite good fun. I'll get some roller banners printed and stuff, because it's clearly an opportunity to buy gear.
Yeah.
So I've been amassing gear, which is quite exciting. It'll be fun. I'm quite looking forward to it.
Yeah, that'll be super cool. Super cool. Well, we got a couple minutes left here in the post show. Anyone want to bring up anything that they have just burning? Any follow-ups to any of our It Came Froms? Any follow-ups to the story tonight?
The It Came From about the being out of work for a long time is a really interesting one, because it's such a difficult one to talk about if you've never been in the situation. But also, you know, there's so many other factors there that you just don't know about. You know, and there might just be being picky around jobs. There might be, you know, they want to do this one specific job, and they won't consider anything else for a number of reasons. I think it is interesting, because especially over here in the UK, that we've got a drive around getting higher employment, or people in proper jobs, as opposed to just things. And they've said, oh, we'll just take any job. You could just take any job and it'll be fine, and just do it. And it's like, well, no, you want a career. You want something that gets you, you know, you want to get out of bed in the morning for it. It's just interesting. I think like I said, touch wood, and I haven't been in the situation yet, but it must be hard work just sitting there not knowing whether somebody's going to offer you a job, and getting that really nasty cycle of, you know, being, you know, refuse the job and then have to go find something else, and trying not to take it personally. You know, it's because you're being judged all of the time. So
yeah, it is something that's rough, because I know that I graduated in December and didn't start a new job until June.
Mm.
And like even that, like 6 months literally after I graduated, I had a couple recruiters be like, so why? And I had a good excuse of like, I just finished grad school and didn't have time to do an awesome portfolio, but now I do. That's why I have this website. But like, you know, that will work for some months, and then people are still going to go back to that why, which,
Yeah.
I mean, it sucks that that's a question that I don't think there's any like good answers to besides portfolio and kind of fluffing up projects that you kind of oversell. Like, oh yeah, I was working with this volunteer thing.
Yeah.
It's interesting, isn't it? 'Cause looking at people's CVs, so we've been employing another couple of people recently, and you sort of look at CVs, and one of the things that was hammered into me when applying for jobs is, if you've got any gaps in your career, then you've got to explain them gaps away. And I kind of, now as an employer, I almost think about it the other way, that if you've got gaps in your career, then you clearly were doing stuff, or there was something going on or whatever. Why is it even my business? And I guess it's more around as well because I'm quite cognizant of women in particular taking career gaps. I think it's becoming more equal now that dads are getting the same sort of paternity leave as what women can get, which is great. But generally, you'll have if one of you is going to take a leave, then it's generally going to be the mum. So they'll have this big gap, and they feel like they have to explain, "Oh, I was being a mum." Like, well, that's fantastic. That's brilliant. Why do people see this as a bad thing? Yeah, I guess I get frustrated about this is where I think large companies, in some respects, have their process, don't they? Of their sifting process, and they just see, oh, there's gaps, and do that.
Hey guys, quick question for you: Is my audio off? Has it been off all night?
It hasn't been off all night, but in the post show, it's not as good as it usually is.
Okay.
I was going to say it once in a while gets a little bit louder, then a little bit quieter, and then it like simmers out.
Shoot, I'm wondering if it's pulling from the right input, and that would.
And please let me know if this is.
Oh yeah, now it's super clear.
Oh, that's better.
Shit. I think we just recorded the whole show with me using the wrong audio.
It sounded
all right. I mean, no, it didn't. I pulled you up the other week when it sounded really bad.
Okay, yeah. Well, if it sounds like that in the future, let me know, because this is how it should supposed to sound. Damn it! Oh, man, it's like hitting one roadblock after another each week, and it's really
it's a learning process.
It's keeping me.
It's an
down,
iterative
guys.
process.
Yes, that's a better way of putting it.
See, I know the design buzzwords.
I'm trying to work out whether his cam's frozen now. No, he's just.
Oh my god! Yeah, no, the audio sucks for the show tonight, guys. Ah, damn it! I'm really upset with myself. All right, well, we'll go ahead and call that the post show. Thanks everyone for tuning in as I figure out my stupid microphone problems.
Did it pull from like your webcam mic, or?
Yeah, it did.
Oh really?
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, that wasn't bad because I didn't really know. Maybe it was just because there was more going on this evening or something, but I didn't, until you did the change, I didn't really notice that much of a difference.
Ah, man. Yeah, well, it's also coming through your headphones. It's gonna be bad. Ah, man. I am. Watch a grown man cry right now on camera. That sucks. Because in my head, I hear this. I don't hear the input. I hear this.
Yeah.
And so, when I'm sitting here talking into this microphone, and I should be talking at the microphone on the camera, it's a difference.
Yeah, I mean,
That's a
I have
bummer.
headphones, so it's not super tinny, but I didn't think you sounded particularly bad. Just now you sound like really good, if that makes sense.
And this is a podcast where I need to sound like this. Ah, damn it.
It is, but also it's a podcast. You're not Taylor Swift, so there is a certain level of give that you can get.
Nah, I'm going to let this get to me. It's going to get to me all day because I have to go now and produce the audio, and that's what I was listening to right now, and I was like, God, why? Why?
But more importantly, do me and Brian sound okay?
Yeah, you guys sound
If we
great.
if we sound great, then it's all good, isn't it?
Then I look even worse. And
this is applicable.
all right, well played. All right, on that note, thank you everyone for tuning in with us. Sorry about the audio issues, and we'll be back next week. Thank you. Have a wonderful evening.